Good morning. Hello, I am Pam Fox. Thank you for being here. All right, so for those of you up your gamers, this is our last week of March, and this month we've been focusing on relationships. So I would like to do one last video. Today's topic is marriage. I'm laughing because I just thought of the scene in The Princess Bride. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Marriage. Anyway, I'm not a licensed marriage therapist, guys. So, this is just I'm just sharing what I know, what I've learned, my encouragements, my advice. You can, of course, take it or leave it. Like anything I say, you can take it or leave it. But marriage, I saved it for last, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to address the relationship of marriage because, obviously everybody's in a different place when it comes to marriage, right? Vastly different dynamics from one marriage to another. So how could I really give kind of blanket advice for marriage? Well, I'm going to, because it's something I am actually very passionate about. I'm very passionate. If you know me, I'm passionate about my plant-based diet. I'm passionate about my faith. I'm passionate about my family, but I'm very passionate about marriage. I don't know why. I've always, some people just have heavy hearts about certain things. And for me, whenever I see sick people, I ache for them. When I see depressed people, I ache for them. And when I see people's marriages break up, my heart just breaks. Because these are couples, you went to their wedding and they're great couples, they're great couples. And then they start families and they have these beautiful kids. And then the marriage doesn't work out. And it's really devastating because most of us, I would venture to say almost all of us, are given no training, very little training. Maybe you took a little marriage counseling class before you got married, but we get very little training for one of the most important, things we'll encounter, our most important relationship, marriage, and we get very little training for it. And some of us, are lucky enough to have really great role models that, were a great example for us, but most people don't even have that. So then we just, we get married and then we just do the best we can. And many times we fail over and over again within our marriage because we just don't really have the tools. So I'm just going to share a little bit about what I've learned. Honestly, I could go on and on. I could go all day about this. So I'll try to stay on topic. So, marriage, first of all, it should be the most important relationship. It should be more important than your relationship with your kids. It should be more important than the relationship with your family and your friends and your coworkers and all of that. Marriage should be a top priority relationship. It should come first because after all, this is the person you've dedicated your life to. This is the person you're going to live with for the rest of your life. And so that relationship is going to be the foundation of all your other relationships. It's got to come first. You've got to put it first. And so today's assignment is going to be really just, it could be as hard as you want to make it, but it starts out with the question, do I want to make my marriage my number one priority? Maybe it already is, maybe it's not, but do I want it? Do I want to make it my number one priority? And if the answer is yes, and I would assume, most people would say, well, yeah, sure. If the answer is yes, are you willing to do some work? Are you willing to do some work? And if the answer is yes to that, then I've got some work for you. The assignment would be to sit down again, and it's best if you actually sit down and write this stuff out instead of just kind of thinking about it. It really is so much. I promise you, I don't like to make promises on this channel, but I promise you, when you do assignments, if you actually sit down in a quiet place with a pen and paper and write things out and really contemplate, ask the questions, think about it, come up with answers, write them down. You're going to get so much more out of it. You're going to get so much more revelation and inspiration from that assignment if you sit down in a quiet place and spend some time at it. Okay, so the assignment is to write down on your paper what is known as the fruits of the Spirit. And if you've never heard of the fruits of the Spirit, it's a Christian, it comes from the Bible. And so even if you're not a Christian or you're not maybe a different faith or no faith, that's okay, because I would venture to say that most people would agree that these spirits, fruits of the Spirit, are very important characteristics that any of us must possess in life, really, but especially within our marriage. And if you stay tuned, you'll hear more about that, what I have to say about that. And I bet that you'll agree with everything that I have to say about these fruits of the Spirit. So if you think of yourself, as a tree, and we branch out and we have leaves and then we have fruit. The fruits of the Spirit are the manifestation that comes out of us and then what it produces. So you can look these up. I'm just gonna talk about several of them. I might not get to all of them, but you can look these up and just write them down on your sheet of paper. And you're going to ponder each of them, and you're going to ask yourself the question. And again, we did this earlier in the month. How am I doing? How am I doing in this category, or with this fruit, or with that fruit? And then grade yourself. And so the reason for this exercise is because it helps you to look at that paper and see how you're doing. Well, I'm doing pretty good in this area, but I could really work on this area. I could really use some work. And so why are we grading ourselves? It's a relationship. There's two people here. The reason we're grading ourselves is because it's a relationship and there are two people here. And because in any relationship, you're going to have very little control on what the other person in relationship says, does, is, but we are going to have control. We have control over ourselves, don't we? We can change and transform ourselves. We can work on ourselves. And so in your marriage relationship, the first thing that you need to do if you're, wanting to make it a priority and improve and transform your marriage is to look within. Look at yourself. How am I doing? And so hence this exercise. So the fruits of the Spirit, they are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So we'll just go through a few of those. So love, right out of the gate, love. Love is awesome. I think most people would agree that love is awesome. If given the choice, to choose between love or hate, we're gonna choose love, right? I mean, obviously we don't all of the time, obviously. But love, and if you want to go deeper, if you want an additional assignment, go back into the Bible, into 1 Corinthians 13. I can't remember the exact verse, but it's the love scripture. And even within the church, I hear a lot about, this particular scripture, how it's very cliche, and it gets dissed on a lot, and it really bothers me because I think this is one of the greatest scriptures, the scripture where I think of it as God's definition of love. And so then therefore, if we want to be better lovers, we can go to this definition of love. What is love? And it talks about love is patient, love is kind, love is not rude, love keeps no record of wrong, love endures, love never fails, all of these beautiful things. And so if you want an additional assignment, look that up and just dissect it and mull it over. Spend some time in that scripture and you will get a very good idea whether or not, you're being as a loving person as you can within your marriage. Well, in life in general, but particularly in your marriage. So getting back to the fruits of the Spirit, the first one is love. The second, love, joy, and peace. So those three right there, I just want to talk about briefly because particularly joy and peace. Are you a joyful person? Does your spouse, when they come home at the end of the day, or you come home at the end of the day, are they glad to see you because you're a joy-filled person? Are you a peace-filled person? Are you always worrying, and are you filled with, fear, and are you always looking, on the negative side, and are you, just generally complaining all of the time? So those two, joy and peace, going back to the definition of love, there's a little phrase in there that says love keeps no record of wrongs. So how many of us in our marriage keep a list of the things our spouse has done, the ways our spouse has hurt us, the way our spouse has screwed up, the way our spouse irritates us. And I forgot to mention right out at the start, I don't have a perfect marriage. I work at my marriage. I'm lucky enough to be married to someone who also is passionate about marriage, and so we work on our marriage. But that keeping a record of wrongs right in itself is enough to destroy a marriage. And so if you are keeping a record of wrongs, that means that you're not a forgiving person. Instead of forgiving your spouse, you're keeping that record of wrongs. And if you do this, it will suck away your joy and it will suck away your peace. Because when we keep that record of wrongs, our heart gets hard and crusty and we become a bitter person. And we worry all the time, and we focus on fear, and we focus on the negative, and we complain. So no joy, no peace. Okay? And I could go on. I could talk more about peace. Peace is a beautiful gift. And, before I encountered my own kind of in the depths of the pit, hitting rock bottom in my own personal life, I was a worrier. I did not have peace. I pretty much was worrying every waking moment of the day. I was an over compulsive worrier. I just was filled with fear, especially after I got married and had my children, because I love them so much and I didn't want anything bad to happen to them. And so I was just constantly in a state of living fear. I had no peace. And when I was in my pit, when I hit rock bottom, I turned to God out of desperation, and I got my life right with God, and I don't know why he did it, and I don't understand it, and I can't explain it to you, but for some reason God gave me the gift of peace, and I overcame all of that horrible worrying and fear and negativity. I mean, I still have that stuff, obviously, on some level, but not anything like it used to be. Thank God, because had I raised my children with that constant worrying and fear mentality, they would hate me today. I mean, I worried enough about them as it was, but I somehow received this peace that, it's hard to even describe. It's an indescribable peace where I was just able to breathe. That movie, Waiting to Exhale, I can totally relate with that title. It was just like, I was able to breathe and let it go and not worry. Anyway, so peace and joy will get sucked out of your life if you do not learn how to forgive. And so, forgiveness is one of those things that, my goodness, I'm already up to 12 minutes. Hang on, guys. Hang on. This is getting really good. Joy or unforgiveness. So how do we forgive? This is so key, because I know my whole life, it took me so long to get this, because this idea of forgiving someone feels like you're saying what you did is okay. And that's not what it is at all. It's not saying, I forgive you, what you did is okay. Forgiveness is a tool for me. When I forgive you for hurting me, I do it for me. That's what it's for. When we forgive someone that's hurt us, it heals our heart, because it enables us to let that go, to exhale, and to move forward without holding on. So when we hold on to anger and we hold on to hatred, when we hold on to those things, that's when we become hard and bitter and negative. So we must learn how to forgive. And, it's so much easier said than done, because when you're in the heat of, anger and hatred and pain over something somebody has done to you, whether it's great or small, you don't want to forgive them. Even if you wanted to forgive them, it's like, how do I even do that? Oh, I forgive you. The pain and the anger is still there, isn't it? It's just one of those things, guys. You gotta, what do they say? You fake it till you make it. I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. You might have to say it 10 times. You might have to say it 100 times. It might take a year of saying it over and over and over. But again, I promise you, if you say it enough times, if you say it enough times, that anger will eventually melt away. It will melt away, and it will enable you to heal and to move on. So forgiveness is key. It's key. In a marriage, sometimes it's just little things, little irritations that layer up, and we hold on to those things, and look how many marriages fail because, we grew apart. Maybe it wasn't even some big thing. It was just, when, we got married young and we grew apart. Well, it's just those little things that layer up because we're not able, we don't have the tools and the practice on how to forgive. So we must learn how to forgive and practice forgiveness. Going back to the fruits of the Spirit, we got love, joy, peace, patience. Patience, that's an important one. I need to say no more. Kindness. Again, are you kind to your spouse? Do you smile? Do you inquire? Do you engage with sensitivity and kindness and gentleness, which is another fruit of the Spirit a little bit later? Faithfulness. Again, need I say anymore? We must be faithful. And self-control. Do you have a temper? Where do you grade yourself on self-control? And it doesn't just have to do with temper, it's, when you see your spouse after a long day of work, do you go, do you just like have no self-control and you go right into, you forgot to do this and blah, blah, blah. Or do you have some self-control and you allow some breathing room and you maybe talk about your day and, share some pleasantries. So that self-control, really comes in handy to practice that and get good at knowing, when to speak, when to be quiet. Okay. So that's the assignment. Grade yourself on each of the fruits of the Spirit. And then from there, devise your plan. So what am I going to do to improve in these areas? Obviously, there are many ways we can improve. We can self-develop ourselves within and in our marriage, even if our spouse isn't necessarily on board. There are websites, there are books, millions of books, thousands of books have been written on the topic. So you have to be willing to go there and read these books and receive some education and inspiration from the people who are, trying to help. There are marriage retreats, which I'm a big fan of. Dwayne and I have been to 2 marriage encounters. Marriage encounters they're a retreat where you go and you do, you're given tools, you're given communication tools and you practice them all weekend. You're given exercises and you practice these tools all weekend. And the marriage encounters are there to help you strengthen your marriage by giving you those tools to practice and then to bring home and use in real life. So those are great, and I'm sure there are many others. Google them. Depending on where you live, it may be harder to find something, close to you. Some are really expensive. I know with Marriage Encounter, even if you can't afford it, they welcome you there. They have scholarships. And then there are marriage intensives for like people who are just, they're right there. They don't think their marriage is going to make it. And they just want to try one last thing to see if there's anything salvageable. You can go to a marriage intensive where they will sit down with you, trained counselors, and just really get to the core and help try to work things out with you. So there's marriage counseling, obviously. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Again, we get little to no training on this topic. And so don't be afraid, if you're really concerned about your marriage or you're unhappy in your marriage, don't just wait for it all to fall apart. Get help. There's help out there. So don't be afraid to ask for help, and I know so many people, they will avoid counseling because it's expensive, or they will avoid a retreat because it's expensive, especially if you have to fly somewhere and you have to put yourself up in a hotel and all of this, it can be very expensive. Don't let that stop you. Don't let the money stop you. Find a way. If you have to borrow it, if you have to take out a loan, your marriage is important. It's important enough to make that investment. It really is. I think that about sums it up. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned next week when I announce April's challenge. I am so excited about it. I am very, very excited about it. All right, thanks for watching and have an awesome day.